Hello, beautiful world. It's us again, Solar Green, and
Sounds again.
and today we're going to talk about the art of sourcing, which I think is a relatively new thing because I was just looking up the definitions of source and sourcing on the internet, and the verb sourcing is only in the definitions referred to as something like a procurement process in a business of how you source material. I'm
Not
like,
quite the
oh,
same context.
that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the art of sourcing life, realities, breakthroughs, possibilities, newness, space, all of that kind of thing, and how you source futures, even. And it's a bit of an alchemical I think it's a new thing to do. I mean, maybe it's been around for some people for a long time, but I don't know. To me, this is fairly new, this art of sourcing, especially sourcing realities. I think that's really exciting. And you and I, Centauri, and the group of people that we work with, which we call the Murmuration of Maestros, we're getting really good at it, at how we source reality. So we're going to explain it a bit and maybe demonstrate it a bit on this, our number 5 podcast. So anything you want to add about that before we dive
No,
in?
let's just get straight on with it.
Okay.
Let's start sourcing.
Okay, well, so in the normal context of life, I think that people experience life happening to them and then they react to life happening to them and then they try and do things to help their way through that, like whatever. There's all kinds of ways you could approach that. But from our perspective as sources or originators of new possibilities and new realities for the world, I think when something happens to us, we respond alchemically, creatively as sources. So we are sourcing the new through whatever happens to us in life. And a good example of that would be Santari 3 years ago when you had your triple bypass surgery. So I think people were kind of amazed at both of us and excuse me, how we went through that. Because it was during COVID, so you were in the hospital. I couldn't get to you. I only got a call once a day or maybe every 2 days to see how you were doing. But for me, and I think for you too, it wasn't our concern that you might die. I was hopeful that you wouldn't, but that we recognized it as an opportunity to source a breakthrough for physicality. And so I lined up all of the maestros as you were in the operation, and we did this great big huge whopping piece of work. We became sources along with you going through the operation, sourcing the doctors, sourcing the nurses to be on their best, sourcing the space for amazing things to occur. And at the same point, when you're sourcing like that, you don't have a set agenda. So I wasn't like, we have to save Centauri. I was like, whatever will be, whatever's right to be is right to be. I wish for him to live, but let's source whatever the movement is, the breakthrough is that he's leading us into, and let's do it that way. And as a result, I went through that fairly calm through the whole thing, fairly okay, even wondering, would you be alive the next hour or the next day kind of thing. And I think you did too, as well, if we use that as a good example of dealing with a crisis in life.
You do remember the day before the operation saying to you that I didn't feel I had it within me to be able to go through with it, energetically, that is. And so you contacted some people, and I could feel certainly an uplift in my sense of self and of beingness.
Yes.
And I think that type of example shows you that there's not a distinction between who you believe yourself to be as an individual and who you know yourself to be as a collective being, which is something I think that people don't put a lot of emphasis on. And the ability then to be able to recover afterwards was, I think, in part because we saw the operation as something which had a greater purpose. It wasn't
Yes.
just I had a problem and the operation was there to fix the problem. It
Yes.
was almost like to imbue the physical body with something that it needed to have in order to operate at a different level,
Yes.
with a greater purpose, even more still. And I think that's what it is to function in the way that we're talking about sourcing life.
Yeah.
People experience life perhaps in a multitude of different ways, but we tend to conceptualize it as this is life without trying to understand what we really mean by that.
Yeah.
And I think what it has left me with is an appreciation that it isn't something that we do in consciousness, that we think it's something which happens outside and beyond our sphere of power
Yes.
and agency, but it is something which almost like comes into the physical body, and it is a experience when you have it, which allows you to go beyond any barriers and boundaries of sense of self and of what you can do in the physical worlds.
Yes.
And I would say that the idea about to being able to source things now, um, all the things which I might have put in the past about I source this and I source that, doesn't bear any resemblance to where we are right now.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. What I've done in the past is I have, when I go out and drive the car, and I look for it to be a safe journey. I always say now a safe journey, but I've also held the integrity of the experience of driving so that we don't have an accident. So it's like setting things in motion to say that we don't have accidents. Nothing happens to us, um, which gives us a traumatic experience.
Mm.
So it is not couched in those terms. We look at life as being a series of fantastical adventures and experience which allow us to express the most powerful sense of what we can give to other people as greater beings also,
Yeah.
without trying to tell them in some prescriptive way how they should live their lives. We give them the space to live their lives in the most amazing way possible. So that, in a sense, is also being able to source something for other people. But I think we're not trying to do things for others. We're operating in a different space of consciousness, by which I mean that we don't have to think about how we interact with people. We give them agency to be the most amazing, magnificent beings possible.
Yes. So we're sourcing them, anyone to show up in their fullest, newest, greatest possibility. Not even just potential, because when I started to write the Alchemical Coach book in around 2003, it was talking about transformation and achieving potential for people mostly. But now I think just what you were saying is I'm sourcing the people I get to work with and get to see in life. I'm sourcing them as magnificent, super creative source beings. So they are originators. They are creators of reality. They are able to source life in a way that is quite amazing. And I really do believe it's a bit of a new skill, because sourcing reality, I mean, we would have started with understanding consciousness, tapping the greater, understanding and potential of things way back when we first met 28 years ago. But now it's more about being able to be sources co-creating innovations in consciousness, breakthroughs in reality, the ability for reality to shine, to be in a high vibrational space, to, a lot of people talk about holding space for someone. And that's a bit of kind of like, there, I've got you kind of feel. But we talk about sourcing space for someone. And in that, it's more like that. It's an opening of the possibility of them. It's an exhilaration of all that they are, their genius, their magnificence. And when we do that for people, they have an extraordinary experience of becoming more and more and more of themselves. So it is for me an alchemical art to be able to source space, reality, possibilities, breakthroughs, the world turning out, futures, the whole thing. Sourcing for me has elevating motion in it, and it's got an opening to new possibilities attached to it.
I'd like to say two things. One is about context. The other is about relationships. As far as relationships go, we do not look to people as lesser beings. We do not consider people to be having traumatic experiences. We do not consider to people to be in need of healing or of saving. So in that sense, we give people agency to be whoever they need to be, whoever they want to be. And in the way that we interact with them, we give them the best support that we can possibly give them by not thinking of them as human beings with problems.
Yes.
And the other thing is to give context to all of this as well. When we're talking about source, we're talking about something which is fantastically, amazingly powerful,
Yeah.
which has no real definition to it, no edges to it, can be as amazingly big, vast, omnipotent as you wish it to be entirely.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we're saying that source is something that is both us, and it doesn't need to us to define it, to say that it is this and this and this. So the reality allows us, when we're talking about this context of source, to be limitless.
Yes.
So our relationship with people is limitless. Our ability to communicate with people is without limit.
Yes.
And what you bring to that then is all that you are, even all that you think you can be, all that possibly you would imagine yourself to be.
Yeah.
It's just like everything just gets blown out of the water. There's no boundaries, there's no definitions, there's no set limitations anymore. Everything is completely open. So there is no sense of even of scale of what it is that we're talking about.
Mm.
So then from this space to source reality, reality is happening. But we're the beings of the most amazing credibility and magnificence.
Yes.
And that is what we're giving. That is
Yeah.
what we are allowing ourselves to be and allowing ourselves to function. And
Yes.
therefore, we're meeting people in that space, which you might say is being created, which I won't even say is being created. I wouldn't even say it's being sourced. It is just the nature of what it is that we are now in the breadth and depth and of everything else, whatever dimensionality we might place it in. We are all of it. And now we can start to do things with people because we are giving them something which is of such awesomeness that they couldn't possibly fathom how they would get there themselves to be that, to function as that, to know themselves as that. And it's not to say that we know them as that, is that the space in which we now are with all of these incredible energetic consciousness, beingnesses, whatever you want to call it. We are completely there together. It is
Yeah.
not just a case of meeting people, it's a case of allowing something incredible to happen beyond thought and conception of what might be in order for that to be present. And we are super aware of what it is that we are bringing all the time, of how we are functioning all the time. And so therefore it all becomes easy,
Yes.
because almost like we have said, it is like that. It is
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. And, you and I believe, well, I do anyways, that everyone, not just people, but the earth, nature, animals, oceans, they all have this ability to be source and sourceful and to source possibilities into the world. It's actually, once you get that, it's a very natural and effervescent way to live, because no matter what is happening, you suddenly have an ability to see beyond it into the possibilities that it brings, into its greater purpose. And then you can reach to its greater purpose and fulfill that in the moment as sources, either together or individually. And that lets the greater purpose show up quicker, with more grace, with more ease, and be pulsed into the reality of the world for everyone to benefit from. And I think that in totality for me is the art of sourcing reality. I witness greater purpose. I see new possibilities. I can work in the quantum field with, pulling new ideas, new possibilities present, new dreams of us, new futures, and then bring those through and then pulse them alchemically into consciousness, into the earth, into reality, into, however we see those as almost constructs or creations. I guess I like the word creations better. They're creations, and we begin to recognize ourselves as alchemical source creators who can source realities and futures for the world.
Mm. Just imagine, because you have a group of people in front of you, and they have all these ideas about who they are because they've been led to believe their stereotypes, or they've been brought up in certain social constructs,
Yeah.
and that's all that they've known. And you suddenly tell them that you're not that at all. You've been living some sort of fabrication. Let me show you how to get out of the matrix. And then it's like people might be curious. They might want to know more, but they still have this idea that it's going to lead them, make them vulnerable. It's going to lead them down a particular path where they won't know how to get back. And you say there isn't any coming back. You have the red pill, you have the blue pill. What are you going to choose? Choose the red pill. It is, so you almost like got to have that type of analogy in referring to the Matrix films
Yeah.
and saying that we believe in certain things because we've been told certain things.
Yeah.
But maybe in another reality, those things don't work at all. Those things have never been dreamt of, never been heard of. There's no vocabulary for those things that you believe in so dearly, that you cherish, that you have faith in, that you believe in, that you think is everything to you. What is life if not that? And you suggest that life is something that you can create in your own way, to live, to express, to understand, to become more aware of. And people will go, I don't know how to do that. I don't know which way to go to get to that place that you're talking about. I don't see anybody else who is that type of leader. And in a way, we're telling people they've got to be their own leaders.
Yes.
They've got to be their own pioneers. They've got to be their own explorers, adventurers. They've got to strike out on their own and have new adventures and go for new horizons, because that is the way in which we're going to move together
Yeah.
as a whole, as a completeness, as a unity, as a totality, all in different directions, all at the same time, all finding different ways to look in the same, with the same eyes,
Yeah.
but seeing different things. And it's all relevant and it's all perfect and it's all wonderful because we're not judging. We're not saying that there is a destination you now have to follow. You are not the one. We are the ones. We are the totality. We are invincible, invulnerable. And then perhaps people will go, I might get that. I might like to try that on for a while
Yeah.
and see where it goes. And you say, take your friends with you.
Yeah.
See who's going to come along on this adventure with you, because it is an unbounded adventure.
Yeah.
And people will, after a while, they'll find their way to go to what it is that we're talking about,
Yeah.
because it is more than dreamland. It is more than wonderland. It is more than taking the red pill and finding yourself in this amazing God space. It is entirely up to you to take charge of this whole idea about enjoying life, expressing life, feeling something which makes you feel all the senses vibrating and tingling and telling you you are in the most amazing creation ever, this physical creation. And you are now going to take yourself to places that you've never been.
Yeah.
And that is like a storybook which you tell children, and their eyes pop out of their heads and their ears tingle because they want to know more
Yeah.
about this adventurous place that you're talking of, which is everywhere.
Yeah. Beautiful. I think we'll leave it right there because that was beautifully said. And I will only just say that the art of sourcing reality is so practical and easy and lovely and connective that I just can't imagine why everybody in the world wouldn't want to, dive into that new capacity that I believe we all have now. So there you go. So there you go, folks. That's a wrap on episode 5 of our Outrageously Evolving podcast. In episode 6, we're going to talk about the art of sourcing breakthroughs for futures and the world.
That'd be interesting to listen to that one.
Yeah, so I hope you join us for that one as well. So thanks for
See you soon.
listening. Bye.
Bye for now.